Comic books are filled with incredible stories written by incredible people, but at their core, comics are a visual medium. The art is the means by which the story unravels for the reader, and while comics don't really work without the story, often a single image can be worth 1,000 words. That's not just an idiom when it comes to comic books, as many tell a terrifying, disturbing, or horrific story in only one single image. In a lot of cases, that's what the cover is for, but the cover is mostly about getting someone to buy a book, which leaves the content to bring readers back issue after issue. When a comic book panel can be described as one of the most disturbing of all time, it has to be a really good one. With almost a century of artwork spread about the millions of pages of comics, that leaves hundreds of millions of pieces of art to choose from, and this list identifies the 10 most disturbing. It might be a high bar to meet, but these panels definitely meet it. I'm Will for What Culture, and here are the 10 most disturbing comic book panels of all time. 10. Robot ripping off Eve's leg. Invincible 111. Robot started out as a superhero, but when Robot and Monster Girl are trapped in an alternate dimension that progresses through time differently, Robot's attitude toward world domination shifts from being not interested to making it his primary goal in life. He and Monster Girl took over the alternate dimension world and returned after experiencing decades of time in their absence. Robot decides to hatch a plan where he will take over the world, but not to rule it with evil intent. He truly believed he could save the planet by ruling over it. Knowing this won't jive with Mark, he sends him to an alternate dimension in issue 108. Mark returns and confronts Robot in his home in issue 111. At the time, Robot was holding Eve hostage, and while Mark is attempting to handle the situation, Robot rips off Eve's leg without a moment's hesitation. It's a terrible twist, which happens all of a sudden and without much warning, making the panel particularly disturbing for the average reader. 9. The Governor makes out with his daughter. Walking Dead 43. The Governor was clearly a troubled individual, but he managed enough charisma to get an entire town of survivors to follow him. He was fairly enigmatic and kept to himself, but the weirdest quirk of his had to be the fact that he kept his zombified daughter in his home. She was locked up and often had a hood over her head, but he would go into the room and talk with her. It's understandable that he would be unhinged after losing his daughter, but he didn't handle it well. It was bad enough that he kept her alive in his home, but then there was the panel in question, where he picks her up and gives her a kiss. Kissing a zombie isn't a safe prospect, but that's not even what's so off-putting about this panel. The guy open-mouth kisses his zombie daughter with the words, "Give daddy a kiss." Anyone who read that and didn't immediately cringe at the sight should probably seek help, as this was arguably the most disturbing panel throughout the entire 193-issue run of The Walking Dead. 8. The implied sexual assault of Barbara Gordon. The Killing Joke. The Killing Joke was a controversial book, to say the least, but it was also critically acclaimed and is often cited as one of the best Joker-Batman stories ever told. The story follows the supposed origin of the Joker, who wants to prove to the world that a single bad day can lead anyone to follow the same evil path he chose. To make it work, he kidnaps Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon's daughter, and the superhero vigilante known as Batgirl. After he goes to her front door and she opens it, he shoots her in the belly, which doesn't kill her. However, it does ultimately lead to her being paralyzed from the waist down. While he's in the apartment, the Joker takes out a camera and shoots numerous pictures of Barbara as she clings to life, and is apparently sexually assaulted by the Joker, although this isn't explicitly shown. Later, when the Joker captures Commissioner Gordon, he torments him with pictures of his daughter's sexual assault and torture. Again, it isn't explicitly shown, but the page showcasing the photos as Jim Gordon screams the name of his daughter is harrowing, to say the least. 7. The Blob feasts on the Wasp. Ultimatum 2. When it came time for Marvel Comics to wrap up the Ultimate Universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610, the publisher released a 5-issue miniseries called Ultimatum to close out the loose ends. Chaos ensued across the planet after Magneto flipped the Earth's magnetic pole, and in the confusion, some people went missing. One such person was the Wasp, otherwise known as Janet Pym. She went missing during a massive flood in Ultimate Wave, which pushes both Hank Pym and Hawkeye to head out looking for her, but when they find her, she's already dead. When Hawkeye locates Janet, the Blob is sitting over her corpse, eating from the belly. As Hawkeye approaches, he looks up and says, "Tastes like chicken." 6. Alex DeWitt's brutal murder, dismemberment, and fridging. Green Lantern 54. Kyle had a pretty good run as a Green Lantern for a while, but alas, it's not all sunshines and rainbows forever in the DC universe, which Kyle learns the hard way when he returns home after a mission looking for his girlfriend Alex. What he finds is a simple note, which reads, "Surprise for you in the fridge. Love, A." He opens the refrigerator door to find his beloved broken and stuffed inside. The panel showing this scene was disturbing for readers, but it also sparked outrage at the way a female character was used, or killed off, to affect the story of a male superhero. From this point forward, anytime a woman was used in this way, she was described as being fridged. 5. Burning corpses and live people. Mouse 2. Art Spiegelman's Mouse and Mouse 2 tell the story of him interviewing and then telling his father's life story. That story involved growing up in Europe, being persecuted as a Jew in Poland, and ultimately his survival tale of being interned at concentration camps. It's a harrowing tale, and one that was told in an interesting way, where the Jews were represented as mice, the Nazis as cats, the Polish as pigs, and the Americans were dogs. This visual representation made the story somewhat relatable without the reader even realizing, and for his incredible work, Spiegelman was awarded the first Pulitzer Prize for a graphic novel in 1992. Because the story is about surviving a Nazi concentration camp, there are numerous panels which could be described as disturbing. But the most disturbing panel of all comes in the second book during a scene where the disposal of bodies is being discussed. Art's father told him of pits where bodies were dumped and then set ablaze, but the horrific details of the people who were dying but still alive were truly disturbing, as the panel clearly indicates. And before we get to the next entry, potential spoiler alert for the boys. Alright, you've been warned. 4. Homelander eating a baby. The Boys 40. In the comics, Homelander is the paragon of virtue, but he does a lot of horribly nasty things to people. As it is eventually revealed, it turns out Homelander wasn't the one doing all those things. It was his identical clone, better known as Black Noir. He was created to keep an eye on Homelander, but would kill him and take his place were he to ever turn evil. The only problem was Homelander never actually did anything to necessitate his replacement, and it drove Black Noir completely and utterly insane. He did a lot of horrific things in the books, but the number one has to be the time he actually ate a baby. It is horrendously messed up and also shows just how crazy Black Noir actually is. Even compared to Homelander, who is a really, really horrible person anyway. 3. Batman's broken back. Batman 497. For a good 54 years in comics, Batman seemed like an unstoppable beast. After all, he's only human and has no superpowers beyond his bank account. The dude was a tank, but all that changed when Bane came calling. Bane came onto the scene and did something no one had ever done before. He broke Batman. In a story aptly titled The Broken Bat, Bane picked Batman up and slammed him down on his knee, breaking his back. He did this with the words, "I am Bane, I could kill you, but death would only end your agony. Instead, I will simply break you." Seeing a superhero like Batman have his back broken was unnerving, and it suggested there might be a world where there wasn't a Batman in it. Eventually, he did get over the injury, but for a moment, every fan of The Dark Knight feared his run as the world's greatest detective was brought to a sudden end. 2. The death of Superman. Superman 75. Superman is the OG, basically a god, and he's pretty much the origin of superheroes in general, and he actually died in Superman 75. This was a comic book that had a massive media campaign, and the whole world knew it was coming. Even so, it was hard to turn the page to see the image of Lois Lane crouching over her beloved Clark, dead at her feet as his tattered cape catches the breeze. It was one thing to know Superman was going to die, but it was entirely different seeing it. Sure, there's a lot of negativity about this event and how it harmed the comic book industry in the 90s, but there is no denying the evocative nature of the image. 1. The death of Gwen Stacy. Amazing Spider-Man 121. Comic books have featured a number of deaths over the years, but Spider-Man seems to get the short end of the stick when it comes to having his loved ones bite the big one. He started fighting crime after his Uncle Ben was killed, and let's not forget, he was orphaned and lost his parents at a young age. But perhaps the most pivotal death in Spidey's comics came in Spider-Man 121. After Norman Osborn decides to teach the web-slinger a lesson, he sets his sights on Gwen. Norman captured her and lured Spider-Man to the top of a bridge, where he throws the young woman over the side to plummet to her death. Pete shoots webbing to save her, but the force of being stopped so suddenly resulted in the breaking of her neck, and she died instantly. When the book came to a close, it did so with this splash, and you can see the emotion all over it. The death of Gwen Stacy was disturbing for a number of reasons, and this single panel indicated exactly how much the death of Gwen would affect Peter's life, and even the comic book industry beyond. And there you have it, folks, the 10 most disturbing comic book panels of all time. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at @USlyDogU. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.